rolling here.
Okay.
So good evening all. Welcome to the HCRA Share the Knowledge. They're mini meetings that we concentrate on little subjects at a time. They go 30 to 60 minutes and on specific subjects. Tonight is the YLRL, the Young Ladies Radio League. And we have Barbara, KC1KGS from Eastern Mass somewhere, and Ann, WB1ARU, also from somewhere in Eastern Mass. You guys can tell me, I don't remember what towns you live in. Somewhere north of Boston, as I recall.
South.
Oh, you're south of Boston. All right. Well,
West.
see, you're
West,
you're east of us, so out here in the Springfield area.
East of Worcester.
Yeah. So anyways, just with HCRA things going on, we have show and tell is our meeting in April, where you get to show off what you've built in the last year or what you haven't showed in the past, and you can win prizes. Last year, we gave all the participants a $25 Home Depot gift certificate or gift card, and it's always a lot of fun. So you can show what you built or what you're planning on building, what you're in the midst of building, and that's the first Friday in April. We have one more Share the Knowledge after this on April 11th, and Ray AA1SE, who's a section manager for Western Mass, is going to talk to us about all things ARRL. And so that should be really good. And then we're going to shut down the Share the Knowledge as everybody spends more time outside until next January. But the meetings still go on. The nets still go on. We still have our 10-meter net, 28,375, Monday nights at 7. And as some of you heard last night, we had Bill W5JAZ, who's from Enfield, which is he grew up like 3 miles from me, and he comes up and visits his mom every summer. He'll be joining us for field day. He was working out of his apartment with 100 watts on his IC7300 into a portable antenna outside Dallas, Texas. And he made it. He heard us. And I did most of the relays. Not many people heard him, but the fact that the band is open and we're hearing him and others is a big thing. So join us on 10 meters on Monday nights. And let's see here. The club has a big raffle going on. You have a chance to win a Geochron Atlas 4K plus a $300 gift card to Best Buy. The drawing is at the April meeting. It's an $800 plus prize. I'd love to have a Geochron hanging up on my wall. It would be awesome. I'd take my map down. But right now, with the number of tickets we have sold, and we hope to sell more, but you have, as of right now, there's a 1 in 80 chance. Maybe after the meeting, you'll have a 1 in 100 chance of winning, which you'll never get that good odds with the lottery or anywhere else. So with that, who wants it first, Barbara or Ann?
I think Ann's going to share her screen, and we'll go.
I'm going to try. It's been a while since I've done this, so.
Oh, that's okay. Every time we do it, we fumble through it. It's even people that do it all the time. So let me turn it over to you, Ann. And I just did share. So if you hit share on your Zoom and then bring it up on your screen, it should work.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to do, there, no.
So if you move the cursor
I
down.
got it.
Okay.
I got it. I think. All right. You want this one.
There we go.
That's it. That's it.
Now, are you seeing all these people on the side? Because I can delete that.
Yep, we see everybody on the side, and I'm just going around and muting anybody that's not talking, and I'll be muting myself in a moment too. I'm going to leave Barbara unmuted. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, all of you, and glad to be on. And I see some YLs there as well as the OMs, and glad to see that, and glad that you're here this evening. My name is Ann Manna, WB1ARU, and I'm the secretary of the Young Ladies Radio League. And Barbara, introduce yourself.
And I'm Barbara Irby. I'm KC1KGS, and I'm the chairperson of District 1, and we'll talk more about the districts for YLRL. And here we are, more than our faces.
This picture was taken at PM Exposition last fall. Guess it was fall, whenever we were in Marlboro last.
August, I think it was August, yeah.
August, I guess. Okay, I've been a ham since 1976, 77, someplace in there. And I got started because my OM Tony, WA1ENO, was a ham for a long time before that. And I finally decided to join him. And I found my niche in being active with the Young Ladies Radio League. Barb?
Okay. So I'm a little more newer to amateur radio. I got my license, my first license in 2018, but also because of my OM, Jim, WB4EJR, who's also on this, he's been a ham for more than 50 years. So I finally decided after knowing him for almost 50 that I would join him as well. And I joined YLRL in 2019, I guess. And it's been a great organization, as well as all the other components of amateur radio that I'm learning a lot about. I'm in healthcare, so this is not a natural fit for me, except for the science part. So I'm learning a lot about electronics. So it's great to have other folks, whether they're OMs, YLs, but it's all one big community. So back to you, Ann.
Okay, just to clarify, in amateur radio, every woman is a young lady or a YL, no matter what her age. And that started back in 1920, when QST defined YL as a woman radio operator of any age. And it became part of YLRL's policy in 1940. And the term XYL is not terribly popular with most YLs because it makes you sound like you're an X something, and none of us want to be X's particularly. So Young Ladies Radio League is women helping women in amateur radio. And our motto is QRV, I am ready. And the organization was founded in 1939. So we've been around for quite a while. And, excuse me, there we go. Our website is easy to find, ylrl.net. And if you go to the page, this is part of a shot of the opening page of our web page. Excuse my phone ringing in the background. Somebody else is going to answer it, I certainly hope. Currently, our membership is about 550. About 20% of them are Canadian and DX, and our ages range from 7 to 104. I guess we don't ask people how old they are, but we know we've got some young members, and we know we've got some that are fairly along in years. As an example, here are some of our younger members and some of our older members in various pictures taken at different times. So some of you may recognize some of these faces here.
All right.
In the pictures.
All right, we'll see you then. Take care. Yeah, bye-bye.
So YLRL, obviously, as any organization, has some purposes. And again, some of these are basically, they're pretty self-explanatory, but we'll talk about some of them a little more as we go through the program. And again, of course, we want to be encouraging and welcoming to YLs to become radio amateurs, but that's not to the exclusion of OMs either. As from what the latest I know is there's about 15% of the amateurs in the US are women. So we obviously want to grow our ranks, but we want to grow them in conjunction with others. So we certainly don't want to leave out the men, but we certainly want to make sure that there's room for us as well. So if there's a way that we as YLRL can help other YLs, that's part of our purpose for being.
And that ironically, that's exactly what percentage of the HCRA is YLs is 15%.
Oh, no, okay, so that's good. I know I'd asked you before how many people, and I appreciate that some folks are on today, but I welcome all the OMs as well that are listening in, so that's great. And then, of course, we want to encourage and assist them to become amateurs, but we also want to have programs and resources for folks that to be able to have people increase their skills and learn from others, and we can talk more about what's available on the website in a little bit as well. And then, of course, to serve YL hams with disabilities or other abilities. Again, we want to include inclusive as possible and include our diversity opportunities. In addition, we do provide scholarships for YLs, and there'll be more information on that later in the program. And again, sort of focusing on communications, electronics, radio activities. So preferentially to that, because that's what we're all about. And then also, just like any other, whether you're YLOM, to encourage competition or getting certificates, and we'll talk more about that as well in an upcoming slide. So thank you.
A little bit of the history of YLRL. As I said earlier, it began in 1939, and it began with this little ad that appeared in QST, which I'll just read a little bit of it. That border is the nearest thing to a pair of lace gimmicks that our printer has, and we had to catch your eye some way. Goodness knows, and you won't tell, how many of you YL key twitchers there are, but we figure there's a lot of you who should read 200 meters and down, the story of amateur radio. Why? Read on. Well, it goes on to talk about an ad. It's basically an ad for the book 200 meters and down, but in that book, it mostly talked about men. So the end of this was, of course, dear YL, the trouble is that it tells the story well. The darn woman ignorer who did this thing can write. It's downright convincing. And it's an interesting, entertaining, fascinating story. Well, anyway, after this little ad was in, there were 12 YLs that responded. And along with Ethel Smith, who was kind of the spearhead of putting the ad in, these are the 13 founding mothers of YLRL. And they were all across the country, as you can see, and some have more than one call, because back in the day when you moved, you had to change your sign. So gals that moved ended up with different call signs. Ethel Smith, unbelievable ham, really an icon to not just YLs, but OMs as well. She just was dynamite. I had the privilege of meeting her back when I was first, 2 or 3 years that I was licensed. And she was really the spark plug for this group, but they took off and became what we are today. And over the years, the membership has varied from time to time. Our organization, Barbara, go ahead.
Yes, okay. So as you can imagine, with any organization, we need to have some a chart, a work chart, and I won't bore you with the details, but just so you know, we have a president, vice president, secretary, who's Ann speaking, and treasurers, database manager, various standing committees, and appointed positions as well. These are all volunteers, and every 2 years we choose new folks to run in leadership roles. We do have meetings on a periodic basis, but as you could probably imagine, we're all over the country and actually all over the world. Can you go back one slide, one sec? Anyway, so basically the instead of, and I know that Ann knows this better than I, since she's been involved longer, I guess people used to mail each other with snail mail for the meetings. Now we don't do Zoom, but we do email. So right now we're in the middle of a meeting right now where the president has sent out agenda items and we all comment on them. And it usually takes a few days to get everything in. And the meetings are held as needed, sometimes every couple of months, sometimes every quarter, but we do all get together from the leadership roles and make sure we know what's going on and plan ahead for the upcoming quarter or next couple of months. So thank you. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the districts, and there's nothing new about this. Everyone hopefully recognizes this this chart, and it's similar to again for the districts for YLRL. We are allocated by the call districts, as in ARRL and all the other call signs, but the Alaska and Hawaii group, they do have their own district for YLRL. There's also a youth district and the VE group, and also DX, since we have YLs from all over the world as members of YLRL. So as you can imagine, we are in District 1 here, and so I'm currently the chair of District 1. And as was mentioned, there was recruiting for YLs to create an organization. There had to be a way of putting out information, and the first publication was the YL News. And the first editor, this was one of the YLs who was one of the 13 quote unquote mothers of YLRL, Enid Carter Aldwell, W9NXB, was the first editor. I don't know, Ann, did you know her? I don't know some of these, how old some of these ladies were.
No, that was a long before me.
Okay, that was before you. Okay, I didn't want you to, you aren't that old. So, okay, and now it's been morphed into the YL Harmonics, which is published every other month online, and I'll speak about that again in a minute. So next slide, please.
Sorry, I keep losing my cursor
Oh, okay.
here.
Sorry. I see it down there. Yeah, got it. Okay, so this is an example from April of 1956 in QST, which had the YL News and Views. And again, at that point, we don't have to really read through this whole thing, but just to get an example, and it said they were guessing about how many YLs, and that was between 1,500 and 8,000 back in 1956. And again, on the right-hand side, there was something about a YL named Marge. I don't know what her call is. It's on the other page, but it says, her OM is not licensed, but Marge is happy that he's interested enough in her hobby to help her build some of her equipment. So I thought that was a pretty good thing. So anyway, that was the old days, and now we've moved up to modern times. So next slide, please.
All right, there we
So
go.
this is YL Harmonics, and there's Ann in the middle with some of the other leaders of YLRL. I think this was at one of the conventions, Ann, is that right?
That was taken at Hampden out in Ohio.
Okay, great. So again, we'll talk more about that later. But anyway, this comes out every other month. It used to be by hard copy mailed out, but to be more efficient, we started doing electronic. And this is also available on the website. But the most recent copies or issues are for members only, but you can read some of the old copies online to see what's in them. And it includes some words from our president, vice president. Then there's each district solicits input from each of their members to let us know what's been happening over the last couple of months. So we have things from what people have done, whether they've been on POTUS, when they've been on trips, if they've been to meetings, and they just share some of the knowledge, maybe antennas they've built or towers they've climbed, and other radio related activities. So it's really great to read what's happening, again, around the world. Some of our members from, I guess, Australia and some of the Asian countries, et cetera, in Europe. So it's really an interesting read every couple of months.
I guess I mentioned already our motto is I am ready, and that was created by one of the early members of the club, and she came up with the idea of QRV means I am ready, and it's the club motto, and it still is. And 33, now many of you I'm sure have heard the term 33 and may have wondered a little bit about it, and it was created in 1939, again by one of the founding members, and adopted by YLRL for exclusive YL use. The gals thought that 88 didn't sound right for one gal to another, and 73 was pretty much established. So they had adopted 33 as love sealed with friendship between one YL and another YL. So with that, knowing that meaning, you realize why it's for YLs. And of course, you don't do it in the plural. It's 33. And I realized that one thing that I didn't make a slide for was, I forgot what I was going to say. I'll come back to it. Okay.
Okay, and the ARRL is also chiming in, and we are a recognized club. by ARRL, and as you can see a snippet here from the ARRL website. So if you want to look about our official standing within ARRL, please look on the ARRL website, and there we are. And I'm not going to bore you with a ton of history, but I think there were some interesting things that happened around World War II that I wanted to share because it was interesting to me. And I said, that sounds really cool. So as you can imagine, in World War II, at the beginning of World War II, when Pearl Harbor happened, again, all amateur radio activity was to cease because the radio communications were for the defense of the country. So how did YLs get involved in this? Again, they were they may have been Rosie the Riveter, but they did other things too that I'll mention about. They taught code and theory, and in addition to working in defense plants. And I wanted to read something from some of our publications that Dot Knapp, who was W2M1Y, MIY, was the only Army amateur radio service woman radio aide, while Viola Grossman, W2JXZ, served with the Signal Corps. And YLRL members were in the Army, and they received instruction in cryptography as well. Again, they helped with the Red Cross, which might make sense saying, oh, that's a women's thing, but they helped with that as well. And Anita Abine, who Ann mentioned earlier, had written an article called YLRL QRV, which was obviously because we were ready. The First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, wrote, and I'll quote from this: "I have read with interest the story of the work carried on by the Young Ladies Radio League, and I applaud your sincerity and enthusiasm. At a time when all of us must be alert to defend the institutions we cherish, the work of the League is an inspiration, and I'm sure will prove of inestimable value should the need for active defense arise." So we were, what a shout out from the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. So that was great. So again, instead of just having Rosie the Riveter, the YLs ended up being wires, women in radio and electric service. And they did work in all branches of the service, and that because of their radio experience, they were well sought after. So they were in the Signal Corps, as mentioned, radio operators, technicians, repair people, as well as instrument repair people. So they did basically make an impact because of their special skills during World War II. I think this is you.
Of course, just like any group, the YLRL likes to get together. And the way that has been established over the years has been conventions. We're spread, as Barb said, we're all over the world, not just the United States, and can't really have member meetings on a regular basis like your club does. We can, unless we had, and even a Zoom meeting would be rather amazing with that many people. But the first convention was held in June of 1955 in Santa Monica, California. And YLs from all over the United States and the Canal Zone were present, and OMs were invited and had a good time. And the second time they had a convention was in 1957 in Chicago, Illinois, in conjunction with the ARRL convention that was held there. And gals came from 24 states in Mexico, and they received congratulations from President Eisenhower at that convention. And since then, conventions have been held every 3 to 4 years in various locations. And this is a list of where they've been for the last all those years. Well, starting in 60, I started the list there. But as you can see, it's been up here in New England, in Cambridge, Boston in 1960. And again, it was Boston, Quincy in 2011, but we've been to Denver a couple of times and been really all over the country. A memorable one was 1989, the 50th anniversary of YLRL. Somebody had a bright idea and said, let's go to the 50th state. And it was a very, very well-attended convention. And a lot of the international YLs, especially those from Japan, were able to come. And it was really I was able to go. It really was a lot of fun. And I have been to most of these, starting with DC in '82. I've been to most of them. And Vancouver, that was Vancouver, Washington. We were in for the 75th anniversary. We're hoping to have another one next year. Working on it. It's with COVID and all and travel restrictions. Nothing's happened for a while, but we're hoping very much to have another convention very soon. And here's a couple of pictures, one from Oklahoma City in 2018 and one from Boston in 2011. And I'm sorry that picture looks a little fuzzy here, but it didn't look that fuzzy to me before. So that's what's going on with conventions.
And as mentioned, as part of the purpose, we wanted to make sure that YLs have the opportunity to get to be part of contesting and certificates. So one of these is a YL Friendship Award, and this is only for YLRL members. It's been called different things over the years. The current name is the 2023 Annual Award for On-the-Air Contact with 12 Licensed YLs. In other words, you could do one a month, for instance. And so it does evolve every year. In previous years, there's been like, you know, when you do the exchange, you say like what your favorite bird is or your favorite flower or something like that. But there's nothing specific in this for this year. But this is one of the certificates for YLs that's available.
And I wanted to mention that this pictures on the certificate are of Ethel Smith, who was the founder. And she was operating Mobile at one point in time in that picture. Sometime in the 50s, probably.
That's great. I wonder what how her rig was set up in her vehicle. I would have loved to see that. That's great. And if people want to get any other kind of certificate, they're very similar to the ones that you might see in general, except they have YL attached to them. So we have it worked all states, worked all continents. We have a digital mode certificate, a DX YL certificate, and also Century Club and DXCC certificate. And I could spend some moments going through the details of all of these, but you probably would be really bored. So my suggestion, if you want to learn more about these, is to go onto the website under the certificate content contest section, and you'll see the requirements for each one. And the again, some are, depending on what it is, are digital, some are all modes. So again, there's opportunities for folks to get involved and get some paperwork out there.
And I might mention that the YL Century Club, Work 100 YLs, also has endorsements, and some of the folks that have the highest number of endorsements are OMs.
There are also a number of contests that are involve YL specifically. They're in February, and the weekend in February, they have the YL OM contest, and that is basically all bands except the work bands are used. You can use phone, digital, or CW, and if someone calls CQYL, that would be an OM, and then the YLs would call CQOM. And I think one time I did hear that. I was just listening at that time, and the person didn't really understand when they were calling CQYL. So there had to be, there was an exchange where the YL had to explain what was going on when she was saying CQOM. Why are you calling OM? So it was an educational opportunity as well. And then in October, there's the DX North American YL Anniversary Contest. And this is, again, for DXs to call North American YLs and vice versa. And they just have to call out, DX YL or North American YL. And again, the details of both of these are on the website as well. And of course, there's lots of YL nets. And again, I think Anne knows a ton more about these than I. I know I've been involved in one regularly, but I'll mention them briefly, and Anne, certainly feel free to add to that. There's a DX YL net on Monday at 1500 UTC on 20 meters. And then there's a meetup on Wednesday evening, again, depending on the time of year, what time it is, depending on the UTC time. So on 20 meters or 15 meters. Yankee Lassies, I usually try to get on that one when my schedule allows, on Wednesday mornings on Eastern time, 8:30 a.m., 3.912. And it's actually run under the auspices of what we call ROAN, which is the Women Radio Operators of New England. And then there's a YL Operators Net on Thursday, again, time time listed, and the Alara node, Echo Link Alara, is the Australian Ladies Amateur Radio Association. So they have that node listed. So Anne, I don't know if you want to say any more specifically about some of these nets, since you are probably on some of those more than I.
Yeah, I have not been on the DXYL net for a while. I have a blank memory on Monday mornings, I guess. I don't remember it till afterwards. Wednesday evenings is one that I kind of chair. It's not really a net, it's more like a roundtable. And depending on conditions, we might be on 20 or 40, and it depends on conditions who's on. It's very interesting. There's one gal in Missouri and I that we hear each other gangbusters every week. And as last week, there were gals on from Iowa, Arizona, Missouri, Alabama, and Massachusetts. So it's lots of fun. And that's one really these are all for YLs. And we don't care if the OMs listen, but the conversation's for the YLs. And most of us will talk to any OM after we're done. Quite no problem with that. Okay, we have 3 scholarships, as Barb mentioned earlier, and they're administered through the Foundation for Amateur Radio, who administer many scholarships for many organizations, and of 2 $2,000 scholarships and 1 $1,000 scholarship. The first one was established in memory of Ethel Smith, the founder. The second one was established in the 80s, I think, late 80s or early 90s. Mary Lou Brown had been a president of YLRL. She was director of District 7 for the ARRL and she was an avid de-expedition person. She loved to go on de-expeditions and sadly passed away in the airport as she returned from a de-expedition. It was quite a shock to everyone. And she was also very generous with her own funds and established several scholarships herself or funded them. And we funded one in her honor. And Marty Wessel, sweetheart of a lady, K0EPE, she lived out in Liberal, Kansas, and she took on the job of being a fundraiser for the scholarship fund. Every time YLRL had a convention, she made up raffle tickets and distributed them to everybody. It was a cash raffle, and she was an absolute champion at encouraging donations. And she was so good at it that she usually persuaded whoever won to donate their winnings back to the scholarship fund. So she did a great job of raising funds for the scholarship fund, which is invested. And of course, we give out of the interest, so as much as we can. But those 3, the $1,000 scholarship is especially for working women who are returning to school or going to school and working at the same time. Whereas the other 2 are generally geared to college or post-college studies. And of course, communication fields are priority, but anything in the sciences or really anything, the candidate has to be a gal and has to be licensed ham in order to get any of the scholarships. So if you know any kids that are juniors this year, any gals, encourage them to look at the, in fact, all students should look at the Foundation for Amateur Radio scholarship list if they're licensed hams, because they've got a lot of awards out there.
So as Anne mentioned, YLRL is very, either has their own conventions, but also participates in other conventions such as the Hampden, which has been held in Xenia recently. There will be a YL table and forum. I have a professional commitment, so I won't be able to go, but I believe Anne will be there. So if anyone's going, stop by the YL table. And obviously other national conventions, whether it's ones in Florida or around the country. And I will speak more specifically about some of the more regional events that are around here, since we're pretty much in the Northeast New England region, the Ham Exposition. So we'll put in a plug for the August 25 through 27 program in Marlborough, Mass. We'll have all new and exciting components to it. And one of the components will be another YL table and a forum as well, an open forum. It'll be an hour and a half to 2 hours, and we can talk about what we want to about getting YLs involved. There's also Nearfest, which is usually held twice a year. It's not formally a YLRL event, but some YLs may be there. And I did want to mention the Maine convention and Hamfest that was held last weekend in Maine. Joanne W1DLC, who's an assistant section manager and also head of a YL group up there, she said there was great interest with their table. Number of YLs stopped by. Somebody wanted some help with an antenna, and a lot of YLs and OMs that stopped by were very supportive of that. So again, we're out there and we're going to try to get information to folks that need it. So if you know of a place where you want some YLs to show up, we can try to work that out. So thank you for your help, whether you're YL or not. And just to prove we were there, and some of you who are on this call may have been there. This was the YL forum last year at the Ham Exposition Marlborough in last August. And you could see we had younger folks and older folks and everyone in between. And I think we had a good time getting together and learning and telling stories about what worked for them, what didn't, how people feel welcomed or not as YLs in the hobby. So it was a great gathering. And then I wanted to put a shout out again, clubs. Obviously, Larry, you mentioned here, and you had some YLs in the group. I'm accompanied here by Kelly, K1SOE, and Leandra, AF1R. This was after the end of Winter Field Day, which was a pretty nice day this last January. So we were eating in our space, our maker space where we are. So this is the Wellesley Amateur Radio Society and the New England SciTech Radio Society, which is in Natick, Mass, where I live, by the way. And so I said, okay, let's get a picture of some YLs. So we did. So it wasn't specifically for this talk, but just to know that we have YLs and we are all welcomed by our club mates, and we really appreciate being members and also learning from each other. And there's a number of smart people, and Kelly's a smart person, and so is Leandra. So it's great to know both of them. So enjoy your clubs.
And eligible and are interested, membership in YLRL is $15 a year. It's really not much, and helps pay for things like having booths at major ham conventions like Hamvention or Orlando or SeaTac, and as well as paying for the support of the group. The online support is not free. You have to pay for websites and all of that. So the dues support that, and you can now join for $45. You can join for 3 years. Those are your two options, though. It's either 1 year or 3 years. Back in 1939, it was 25 cents, and postage, I think, was a penny back then. So we all know things have gone up. And where can you find YLs? Well, of course, you can find us on the air, and you can find us online at ylrl.net. And if you forget whether we're .net or .org, it doesn't matter. You'll get there anyway. There's all kinds of general information and district information, and YL Harmonics, as Barb mentioned earlier, they are available online. The most recent issues are in a members only section, but all the older issues, if you want to see back into the 50s and see what the YLs were doing then, all of the one of the members scanned all of the issues into files that could be online. It's just amazing what she was able to do. And we're on social media, Facebook, there's actually two different YLRL pages. One's a group and one's a page. I don't understand the difference, but there is. And although I am not a Twitter or Instagram user, I know there is a YLRL presence in both of those locations. So if you are a YL, consider joining us. Find a club that will welcome you and get on the air and find support in learning. Well, encourage the YLs around you. Don't write us off. And YLs do all of it. We've got SOTA and POTA operators. We've got field day. We've got demonstrations at schools. We've got either field day or I think that was another field day operation. National Parks on the Air, CW, getting on HF. YLs are in all aspects of the hobby. I have a friend out in Colorado who's an avid RIDI operator. So something for everybody. Anybody have questions?
Well, if you're going to be at Dayton this year, I'll find your booth and I'll say hello because I'll be there too.
Is that you, Larry?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless somebody wants me to go back to something.
Well, let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions or comments? If you missed any part of this or you want to review it, what happens is because I recorded the video like I do all the meetings, and it'll get saved when the meeting ends, and then I put it up on my Dropbox and I share it with Vanessa, who is our HCRA web guru, and she posts it on the HCRA Facebook page and onto the HCRA YouTube page. So you'll be able to get any of it, and I'll send a link both to you and Ann and Barbara too. You can
thank
download
you.
the video too. It's usually a couple hundred meg, but it's I think it's an MP4, I think is the file. I'm not certain, but you'll have access to it too. Editing wise, it's up to you. I don't do any editing with it. I don't have the time to chop off the pre-meeting stuff, but you know, you have access to the rest of it. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Quiet night.
I just
Oh.
want to thank these young ladies for a group presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. That's the main thing. It was nice of us, Larry, to ask us to speak. And again, for me, a lot of it was new information because I hadn't delved in the history. And I know Anne has lived YLR longer than I and has some great stories from her experiences. But she was not around in 1939 with the first mothers of amateur
Unless she's
radio,
aged
so-
very well.
If she has, we want to know what her secret is. But she's a wealth of information. And again, my big thing is just getting folks involved, whether you're YL and OM, anybody, just let's all join together. The community is amazing, and I appreciate everyone being so helpful and friendly, and we hope to be that to each other. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Well, in our club, the YLs are welcome to do and join us with anything, as Jackie knows. And Jackie, go ahead, just unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm curious if you have any regularly scheduled trainings of any type directed specifically to the women in the group.
I'm sorry, I
think-
missed part,
Oh, yeah, go
I
ahead.
missed part of your question.
I'm curious to know if you have any regularly scheduled trainings.
Not at the moment that I know of. Shoot me an email, wb1aru@gmail, and be a little more specific in what you're interested in, please.
Okay, thank you.
And I think part of the, I mean, also when we have this, I think Jackie, you said you were in Virginia now, so I know it might not come up here, but I think if there's ideas that we can throw around at the forum at the Ham exposition, then we can work on that too. Because I think last year some of the YLs were interested in having resources available online that we tried to see if is anyone willing to be a mentor for that particular thing. So we're still working on that, but those are good questions. So thank you.
Do you mean the Hamvention? Were you talking about the Hamvention?
No, the Ham, the local, more local.
It
one.
used to be Boxborough. It's now called the Ham Exposition. in
Oh,
Marlboro
the
now.
That's
Boxborough.
in
Oh, okay,
Massachusetts,
yeah.
not if you're in Virginia. You can certainly welcome to come up, but it probably would be more of a trip for you.
Well, I'm there 3 or 4 times a year, so.
All right,
Okay.
well,
Got family
I'll
there.
email you the link to the Ham Expo, Jackie. And
Oh, great. I'd like to see it,
And if you
because I'm
want to,
not going to Hamvention this year, so.
okay, so maybe
Okay.
if you want to come up around the end of August, you can come see us and we'd be happy to have you and we can talk more.
Okay.
So, But
Great,
now
thank you.
we have a question from Ann N1YL.
Hi, this is more a comment. I just wanted to thank you, Anne and Barbara, for coming to this wonderful club to present. And I also wanted to comment, Jeannie Dodge is one of our members in Franklin County, and she hasn't been able to come to any of our meetings recently. I was wanting to welcome her. And Ann KC9YL, in case you didn't notice that several of the YLs are called Ann with an E. It's
I see
something.
that, yeah.
Anyways, and, I invited Ann to join us tonight. She's with me in the LICW. She runs the YL group on Monday nights in the LICW. So just
That's awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
if you guys want to take your LICW stuff to the next level, Rich and Howard should be, or at least as of right now, are tentatively going to be at the Ham Exposition in August. They'll be doing a forum and might have a table in the vendor area as well. So you can meet the founders of the LICW in person if you're interested.
I'm number 257. Ann and I are very active, and Dirkman, KC9YL, are really active and know Howard. And that it's actually through HCRA that I found out about LICW and joined them several years ago. It's been a great benefit to me, as well as being part of YLRL and the Wednesday morning nets. We used to go on a lot, and I'm glad they're continuing. But thank you, Ann and Barbara, for joining us tonight. It's great.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having us. This is great information. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
for the
comments,
kind
Ann.
words.
Does
And we-
anybody
and-
else have any questions or comments or everything? Lots of head shaking. Jackie, do you have another question? I saw your hand is still up, or
Oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't know better. But since you asked, what's an LICW? I thought that was a licensed social worker. That's
Long
clearly
Island
not what it
CW
does.
group,
What
Long
is
Island
that?
CW Club.
Oh,
they
the
teach
sure.
CW.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with them. Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, great. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Ann, for both coming out. I know I met you both at Ham Expo last year and with the Big E and all that. We had a great night chit-chatting. And thank you for joining us. And we appreciate you spending the time to put everything together. It was very interesting. Other than knowing it by name, I really knew nothing about it other than it was for YL. So
It's great to learn and great to share. And thank you all for paying attention this evening. And it was a lot of fun. So thank you very much for inviting us. And
Barb and I had a good time getting this all put together.
creating it together. So that was a lot of fun.
I
too
have
for
to
us.
comment, this one fellow has been driving all the time through this meeting.
oh, that's Brad.
Oh, it's getting very dark there. It was light when we started.
I'm doing one of those so-called NPR moments in my driveway. So I've gone from West Hampton, Massachusetts to Winchester, New Hampshire during the
Wow.
course of this event.
It's good. I'm glad you were traveling in a good way. So that's great.
Yeah, I did not look at any of your slides, by the way.
I'm glad to hear that.
just in
I was
case-
concerned.
If you listen to us, I guess that was great.
Yeah, if you
Well-
hear about the Prius stuck in the
Yeah,
in the field or in the what's the body of water, the oxbow, that's because he was looking at the slides while driving.
Okay, no, we don't want to cause a
Yeah.
crash, no way.
yeah.
All right, well, everybody, thank you
Okay, good.
again,
Thank
and
you very
everybody have a
much.
good evening. We have people from Eastern Mass, Central Mass, Western Mass,
In Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, Virginia,
That's
you
great.
know, we've got Connecticut in here, we've got New Hampshire in here, so we had good coverage today for our small group. And just with the women attending, I think that's like 35% of the women at the meeting too, but just for your percentage things. But anyways,
Percentage things, okay,
everybody
great.
have a great week and a great weekend. And also, thank you for joining us,
Thank you very
and we'll see you all the next time. Have a good evening.
Okay, 73 and 33.